Hey everybody, welcome to the TMC water cooler. As always, with me today is my co-host Hendrik,
Hello.
and we also have a guest with us today. You may have heard of him. He is known as Xander. He runs Crossing Zebras, and he's a huge nerd. So
He's
say
also
hello,
on the
Xander.
CSM. You kind of overlooked that more important role. I mean, Crossing Zebra's a blog. CSM's more important. Let's be
Yeah,
honest
what
here.
the fuck was that about earlier, by the way?
Well, who cares about the
Yeah,
CSM?
well, that's true. No, CSM doesn't do anything anyways.
Thanks very much for having me on, guys.
How are you doing, Xander?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. It's been a busy week or so with different bits and pieces in game and out. I was actually due to be on an oil rig this weekend, so I wasn't going to make this recording, but that got postponed. So I'm here with you, lovely chaps, to record this.
That's right. You work on the oil rigs in the North
I
Sea,
work
don't
on
you?
rigs in the North Sea. That's absolutely correct.
That's. I had a friend. Well, I have a friend who does that in the Arabian Gulf, and it's pretty interesting to hear about what he does on that rig to keep himself busy. Like
Yeah,
in
it's not that
solitaire.
interesting what I do. To be honest, it's not that interesting what I do
He takes
offshore.
playing cards and he just plays solitaire.
Wow. Okay.
And like and then he'll also take books, and that's all he'll do. He'll either
Uh,
read or he'll play solitaire.
See, most of the rigs I've been on, I don't know what the Arabian Gulf's like, but most of the rigs we go into the North Sea, they have internet. I mean, it's slow. And when I say slow, I mean like cripplingly slow. I mean, real bad. But it's normally just about fast enough that I can get onto Twitter, I can log onto e-forums, I can get onto Skype, and just for IM purposes, and Jabber, and most rigs I go on normally I can even log into the game as long as there's not been any massive patch updates or anything like that. I can normally log in to update my queue, but don't undock obviously. But we have internet, and that's half the battle, really, isn't it, these days?
Yeah, I think they do have internet on most rigs nowadays, but I just know he likes reading. He doesn't like using the internet too much, like when he's out there. Um, so as we usually do, what games have you been playing since you have not been on the rig lately?
See, this is bad because you guys. I guess I should put this caveat out there first. I am not a PC gamer. I
You're
do
not.
PC game, and I hate PC gaming with a passion. My two
Well, you're also
favorite
playing on a
games.
Mac. Let's be honest. You play Eve on a Mac.
Yeah, but I mean, I also play Eve on a Windows partition on a Mac.
Oh, okay. So you had the
So
bootkit set up.
I mean, so that's kind of cheating that a little bit. But I despise PC gaming with a passion. I my two favorite games in the world are PC games, unfortunately, and one of them you can't play on consoles, which is Eve Online, and the other one you can play on consoles, but it is fucking horrendous on consoles. Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear.
Oh wow, okay, I just realised that I should have checked that first. Which is Football Manager, which I don't know if it's a game you guys get over in the US.
We get it in
Soccer
the
Manager.
US.
Yeah,
I see
we
it on
do.
like Steam a lot, and I know a lot of people who played it.
Yeah.
It's one of the top three played games on
Yeah.
Steam.
Yeah, I mean, Football Manager is just like the most amazing thing ever. And
They
you can't get that for.
it's basically, for those who don't know, it's more or less franchise mode in NFL, but it's less you're playing the game and more you're managing everything else, and it's kind of cool. Like I always liked those sort of games.
Yeah, so those are my two favourite games on PC. I do, obviously, every time the Steam sale comes around, I do have a big Steam collection. I do buy games on Steam, and I do collect them like Pokemon, and like most of them never get played.
Do you ever
So
play
I mean,
like indie games like Rogue Legacy or
I haven't played Rogue Legacy. I mean, I'll give you. I mean, I've dipped into this Steam sale already, and I'll tell you some of the things I picked up from this one. So I picked up Gone Home, which is a game I've been meaning to pick up for ages, and it was in a lot of sort of 2013 lists as like the best narrative title of 2013. I
Yeah.
think IGN had it for that, and top indie title and things like that. So I picked that up. I grabbed what else did I get? Space Hulk, which obviously isn't an indie title, but it was massively reduced. It was like 90% off.
that
I'm a
was
little
an
bit of a
interesting
Space
game
Hulk
in the
fan.
sense that it was really bad when it first came out. I don't know if they've patched out the bad.
I'm reliably told it's terrible,
Yeah.
but it was like £1.90 or something crazy, which is like less than $3, and I was like, okay, I'm willing to give it a punt for that price. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the last one I picked up, where is it here on this list? Nidhogg, which is a game that I don't know if you guys played that, like the pixelated one-on-one sword fighter,
Yes.
which I'm.
We reviewed it.
Yeah, you guys did
I
review
think.
it, didn't you? It's meant to be astounding, and I've given it a little bit of a run out, but I've only played it for an hour or so, and I'm horrible at it, just horrible.
Can
But
I suggest a game to you that you may like, you may not like? Called.
go for it.
Well, Rogue Legacy is a game I really like. It's a fun indie game. But the game I was going to mention is Nosgoth, because that has been a game I've been playing lately. It's
What was
in
that game,
beta.
sorry?
Nosgoth, Nosgoth. It's
Okay.
Do you ever hear like the Legacy of Kain video games?
Sure, I've heard of them. Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
spin-off of those, but it's a 4 versus 4 team deathmatch type game.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's a really fun game that a lot of people I know have been playing lately. And that's
Uh,
due to come out. It's going to be free to play, though. So
I mean, the one game I've been playing ridiculous amounts of lately, like obscene amounts of, which doesn't really fit in with the TMC remit, but it's probably going to be my game of the year at the end of this year, is Mario Kart 8, which is just
Mario
like,
Kart 8 is awesome.
it's just like the best thing ever.
The,
It's just
the best thing
amazing.
to come out of the game isn't even the game itself. It's the animations of the people looking at each
Oh,
other, especially Luigi. He has that death
Luigi's death
stare.
stare. Yeah, Luigi's
So
death stare is the
good.
best thing ever. Mario Kart 8 is just the best thing that's ever existed. So I've been playing an awful lot of that. But yeah, that's my gaming over the past week or so.
Yeah, I think Mario Kart is probably like one of the best games in series in general, just because it's so much fun. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't think
so
there's
strong.
ever been a bad Mario Kart game.
And like a lot of people are saying, this is. I mean, I buy Mario Kart. I just buy Mario Karts when they come out because it's Mario Kart. You know what I mean? So I just automatically pick them up. But I do agree with a lot of the people who are suggesting this is probably the best Mario Kart yet, and that's like as high praise as you can give it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a really storied franchise, and I think this one could be the most complete one yet. It's just astounding.
I always liked the Super Smash Brother games, and I think they're doing a new one, so that'll be
You
kind of
know,
cool to see that.
I always feel like I see people who are good at Super Smash Brothers, and I just don't get it. Like I always buy them and I enjoy them, but they always feel almost like party games to me. Like I never feel like I'm good at Super Smash Brother games. You know what I mean? I never feel like I'm
Yeah.
talented at them. I just kind of get in and play with three mates and we smash the key. They smash the joypad for a little bit and have a bit of fun. But they always feel a little bit shallow to me, which I know they're not. It's just because I'm bad at them. Yeah, give me Street Fighter for that any day of the week.
Yeah, I always thought that those sort of games were always fun to play party games, especially Mario Party. Mario Party was probably like one of my
Mario
more
Kart is good
favorite
fun.
party games to play with a bunch of people in a room.
I never would have guessed that Mario Party is a party
No, it's not. It's not like it's in the title or anything.
game.
All right, so we're kind of light on news in general as of late, just because of how the summer usually goes. Other than Steam sales, Summer Games Done Quick is wrapping up. But we have a kind of interesting discussion in which it was actually recently raised, but it's been an ongoing discussion since pretty much the invention of YouTube, in that video game Let's Plays and whether or not the developers are owed any uh, sort of kickback or revenue raised by the Let's Play videos. Recently, Phil Fish came out on Twitter after a long hiatus after he announced Fez 2's cancellation, in which he basically said it was piracy, that video game Let's Players aren't sending money to the game developers whose content they are using without permission in some regards. But it's kind of an interesting discussion, so let's get into that, because I know Tegaminus has his own views on it, and Xander.
Oh, I have so many views on this subject. I guess I'll start us off because my views are the best kind to argue against. One, to get it out of the way, Phil Fish is a great guy who says the right things in the absolute worst possible way. And he's got a lot of problems, so I don't really like people dogpiling on Phil Fish as like being a horrible human being or anything. He's not a horrible human being. He's just like all of us. He's got issues, and to move beyond that and into his words, basically what he's saying is that YouTubers, specifically Let's Players, not reviewers, but people who upload walkthroughs, playthroughs of videos with commentary to the internet to be viewed, like basically viewing the game from start to finish, should kick back a portion of their ad revenue to the developer. And I'm not sure on the mechanics of it, but I actually generally agree with that sentiment, specifically because I think that when you're using somebody's work like that, it's not unreasonable for them to expect at least like a small cut of your ad revenue, because there's a difference between, let's say, like Total Biscuit, right? Total Biscuit is not an LPer, he's a reviewer. No commentary on Total Biscuit's quality or anything, just he is a reviewer, right? So when he makes money off of his reviews, that is totally fair use, because he's only parsing in part of the footage of the game, and he is doing it for purposes of criticism. But when you're doing something like let's say Darkside Phil or or PewDiePie or Tobuscus or any of the really big Let's Players, you kind of run into this thing where they're just uploading 100% of the footage that they get, or near enough to it, because editing out fails and that kind of thing.
Well, let's be
And
honest here. Darkseidphil, one, is he really a big YouTuber? And two, he does not edit out his fails. I've seen a lot of those videos.
no, Darkseidphil definitely doesn't, but PewDiePie and Tobuscus and a bunch of the other famous LPers, I can't remember them because I don't watch YouTube LPs at all.
Chip Cheesem and
Except when I'm trying.
Ironicus are probably.
Yeah, Chip Cheesem and Ironicus, Slow Beef and Diabetes, to a lesser extent, because they mostly do like joke stuff, and they generally don't monetize their videos as much as other stuff. But point being, I don't think that it's unreasonable or rude to just sort of like leave that decision up to the developers whether or not they want to take a small, specifically a small portion. I don't think that LPers should kick back a major or all of their revenue to the developers. I think that like 10 to 20% of the revenue, maybe taken from YouTube's share, because YouTube actually does take a pretty major share of the ad revenue, and kick it back to the developers because they did all the art, they programmed the game, they made the mechanics. Like everything that you're commenting on is all stuff that they made, right? It's all stuff that they did. The transformative agency of somebody playing a game is not that significant unless you're playing a game that is specifically designed to be very transformative, like Dwarf Fortress or whatever. So, yeah, I think that it's an entirely reasonable statement to make, and I don't understand why people are so up in arms about just like kicking back money to cool creators. Like if you enjoy their stuff and you're making videos based on their stuff and you're monetizing those videos so that you are earning money based on work that is based on the work of other people, I don't think it's unreasonable to kick them a little bit of money on the side. So what do you guys think?
Okay, so I consider myself pretty clued in to gaming culture because I've been like playing games. I mean, I'm like in my mid-30s now, and I've been playing games for Jesus 20 years now. Realistically, I've been a video gamer, I would say. And in that time, I've got more and more clued in with the culture. But I have to admit, the Let's Play thing is something that's by and large passed me by. You mentioned there, Teg, that a lot of this issue is people that are filming. You know, they're Let's Playing the totality of a game. I mean, how common is that? Because my understanding was that as far as Let's Play goes, people don't Let's Play a whole game. I mean, that's fairly rare. I mean, that's a fairly rare thing. You'll Let's Play, you know, a segment or a particular chapter or level or a particular part of the game that you enjoy, or you'll piece bits together for a review or some kind of, you know, the kind of end-to-end thing isn't actually that common just because of the sheer length of games a lot of the time. You know the practicalities of Let's Playing an 8-10 hour video game is often kind of beyond the vast majority of people who do that kind of thing.
So Let's Plays actually are kind of an interesting thing in which most people I know who do Let's Plays do the whole game. Most famously, in the modern form of Let's Plays in terms of doing videos, it was actually started by Slowbeef, allegedly. I mean, this is like in 2006, 2007, and he's like probably one of the first people that you can actually point to that he probably did one of the first video Let's Plays. But Let's Plays before that had always been like screenshot Let's Plays. You know, I would hit F12 or print screen on my computer while I'm playing a video game, and we would share the experience of playing the video game over a message board. And on Something Awful, they have a subforum called the Let's Play subforum that did this. And Slowbeef started to do videos, and then that was like in 2006, 2007, thereabouts. And it moved on to become more regular. And also that was at the same time that YouTube really first came onto the scene. So a lot of people actually do the full game Let's Plays, from what I've seen through that, and through people like PewDiePie or Jesse Cox. Total Biscuit actually does some Let's Plays in the sense that he'll play like Hearthstone Let's Play, which is kind of weird and kind of silly at the same time. But there's also a lot of people out there who just do a full Let's Play. Some people obviously do like one shots where it's a single video on that single game, and usually those are clearly labeled as one shots, but those are also on Let's Play channels, which is kind of interesting to think about.
So to sort of jump into this, Hendrik is correct. The majority of videos that are labeled as Let's Plays are, generally speaking, the game from start to finish. Whether or not they 100% the game is, get every item, do every side quest, is generally up to the person that's playing the game. And basically, they usually separate them into specific segments, which is where I think the confusion is. Most Let's Players tend to divide their Let's Plays by levels. So, like, here's like, if I were to do a Let's Play of Doom, for example, just because I've been playing a lot of Doom lately, I would probably have, like, 4 videos, right? I'd have one for each episode. Knee Deep in the Dead, I forget the name of the second episode, Inferno, and Thy Flesh Consumed. And I just have those as 4 videos. They're each specific segments, but they're all part of the same Let's Play, right? So that's probably where your confusion is. The majority of Let's Players do full playthroughs, and then some of them also do, as Hendrik mentioned, one-shots or tries-its, or in Total Biscuit's case, What the Fuck Is, and so on, that are more intended to be sort of like a critical condensation.
What we do on TMC with our preview videos, it's basically what a lot of people do with their one-shots. They take a look at the game and they discuss what the game is and what it's like. But some people tend to do it live and, a raw form of analysis, like what Total Biscuit does. When he's commentating about the video game, he's actually playing it and he's giving you his like immediate reactions to the game. When we do it, we record the footage and then we talk about it in a post editorial or post commentary situation, which I then layer into a video editor over our footage.
Okay, so here's my biggest problem with this argument. Most games, certainly not all of them these days, but the vast majority of games are designed to be an interactive experience. There are some exceptions, and I'm thinking of things like Gone Home, I mentioned earlier, Dear Esther. There are some titles out there, and there are more and more of them all the time, which are kind of a very strictly narrative experience. But the vast majority of games, and the great example you mentioned there was Doom. I'm not going to watch a Doom Let's Play. I'm not going to watch a Doom Let's Play, like full stop, to be perfectly honest. But let's say I was that way inclined. I'm not going to watch a Let's Play Doom video and not want to play that game because I've seen the story, or it's somehow spoiled for me that how to do certain parts, certain tricky parts of the game, or certain puzzles are solved. I'm either going to watch that Let's Play video and I'm either going to buy that game or I'm not going to buy that game. But surely this whole argument that Philfish makes completely ignores the fact that these Let's Plays are, to some greater or lesser degree, a form of advertising for that title in the first place.
A lot of game developers actually agree with that mindset. People like, who is it? I have the article somewhere. People like Blizzard are very proactive in having Let's Plays done. Sort of Ubisoft, Capcom.
I've read of developers who actively send their titles out to Let's Players.
Yeah.
On the basis of the fact that this is advertising.
Yeah, they'll send it to like large channels like the Yogscast or Total Biscuit, or like they'll send early review copies like, hey, start to Let's Play this game before it's out.
Yeah.
That way it can help us get our sales up. And to me, that's a kind of interesting, like, well, that's for people like Total Biscuit to do it, who claims he's a journalist, that's disingenuous to some of the ethics involved in what he does, especially when he complains about larger media like GameSpot or IGN doing the same thing, which is kind of funny. But obviously, there is a way to use Let's Plays as a developer in a form of marketing. I've seen Let's Plays and that made me go, I really want to play this game on my own now. Like, this looks like a lot of fun. Games like Far Cry or what's it called? Valiant Hearts. Just I've seen people play them. And I'm like, this looks like a really fun game. I really want to play this now. Minecraft kind of does the same thing. I'll watch a Minecraft video from Yogscast and I'll be like, I can get into playing Minecraft again. And then I go and play Minecraft again and I realized how bad of a game it is for me.
Yeah, so my perspective on it is disregarding the whole concept of like it's free marketing. I generally don't like to like wade into sort of meritocratic, like capitalistic sort of discussions in that sort of regard, just because it's like, well, if it was a good game and you're LP in it, then people are just going to want to buy it anyway. And that's not entirely true. That's entirely like up to each individual person. I do think that saying that LPing is piracy is not true at all, obviously, but that would be like saying that watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 is
Well,
piracy,
okay,
and
so
no, it's
so
not.
for Mystery Science Theater
But
3000, let's kind of get onto that real quick. They actually used public domain videos and movies. When the guys who do Mystery Science Theater 3000 made riff tracks, when they want to do a big movie, uh, like say Starship Troopers Live, which they did I think last summer, they actually have to buy the rights to it from the rights holder. So there is a whole copyright system in place that allows them to do that. For video games, there's no public domain games that I know of, unless like there's games with like open source code out.
there are a few. Yeah, there are a few games that have been released into the public domain by their developers, but for the most part, they're few and far between. YouTube actually, it's not really something that is a gray area because YouTube explicitly says if the developer comes to us and you don't have permission to let's play their video, then we will take their video down. We will take your video down, like. And that's kind of the way that it works with like Rift Tracks, right? If Rift Tracks, if they do a commentary, let's say on Transformers: Dark of the Moon,
Which they did.
I'm just picking.
Yeah,
Did
I think
they?
they've done that one. I know they've done the previous Transformers, but basically for Rift Tracks, there's a big
Yeah,
thing about Rift Tracks though is that's all audio. You're not buying the video. Let's just put that out there. You're not buying a copy of Dark of the Moon with their audio commentary. You're just buying the audio commentary, and then they have a program that you can download for free that syncs up the video and the audio together with your DVD player.
yeah, and it's super interesting actually because these sort of copyright things. That's why they have to do that because for stuff that isn't public domain or has been released to them by the original movie creator or studio that owns the movie, whatever, by the studio that owns the movie rights, right? They can't like legally broadcast that with their commentary because it's not significant. I think it was ruled not significantly transformative enough to warrant protection under fair use if they're making money. I'm pretty sure if they did it for free, then they can do that. That's a little bit more of a gray area because that falls under the nonprofit section of fair use. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say some of the fair use clauses for you guys, and then I'll have you guys comment on them, talk about them real quick because I don't want to hog this discussion more than I already am all the time. So give me a second to bring it up here, and I will. So there are 4 fair use clauses, and it's whenever something is being considered for fair use, it is being considered for purposes such as criticism, comment, journalism, teaching, or scholarship or research. And in determining if a work is made for that, a number of factors are considered, specifically 4. The purpose and character of the use, such as whether or not it's a commercial product. So in the case of a Let's Play that's been monetized, that is a commercial product. In the case of a Let's Play that hasn't been monetized, that's not a commercial product. So that's perfectly covered under fair use. Or for nonprofit educational purposes. The nature of the work that is being covered under fair use, so like the copyrighted work, if you're commenting over B-roll footage, that kind of thing, or whether you're commenting over an actual movie, or so on. The amount and sustainability of the portion used of the copyright work in relation to the transformative elements. So basically, how much of the work are you using in your fair use, the thing that you're claiming for fair use, and the effect and use of the fair use thing on the market in relation to the copyrighted work. So, what are you guys' like thoughts on that?
Wow.
That's to be honest, that's American fair use. That's not European Union
Yes,
law. That's
yes.
the North American or United States law, and it gets tricky at times. Me having to deal with YouTube when we do our videos is even more tricky because what we do I would constitute as fair use because uh, we use a lot of our journalism, quote unquote. Uh, and I say that in the sense that I never really thought games journalism was really true journalism. But we're journalists analyzing and discussing a product or an event or something like that. YouTube tends to not see it that way. They see it as it's a let's play, which is kind of funny in some regards because I can't say I can't really call when we do a preview of say Titanfall. We're analyzing the game, we're discussing the game, and that's not really a let's play. That's more of it's a critique of the game. But YouTube tends to go, well, no, you still need EA's permission to monetize it. I'm not saying we didn't have that problem with EA, but we've had that problem with other games that we tried to do, and it ends up either us having to make the video non-monetized or uh, having to either hunt them down, which can also be a pain in the butt because sometimes video game PR people aren't very intelligent in the regards of, hey, I need X, Y, and Z stated so we can use your product in our fashion. It's also annoying because YouTube, again, is not really understanding that that's not really what they're doing is not really protected under fair use. Or what we're doing is actually protected under fair use. What they're doing is actually in violation of fair use in some regards.
The big thing about fair use, I will say, is that it has to be challenged. Basically, it's still kind of uh, when I see it, the sort of like pornography. I'll
Yeah,
know it when
it's
I'll
like, what's
see it.
obscenity? Well, when I see it,
So
I know what it is. And it's like,
yeah, but yeah. So what do you think about to move it over to Xander? Like what do what are your opinions on like monetizing LPs? Like let's move away from should developers get money for their LPs and let's go to a more fundamental question. Do you think that people should monetize Let's Plays?
It's a I taking the kind of YouTube sort of publishing angle out of it. You know, whether it's YouTube or whether it's another site or whether there's some kind of conglomerated site for Let's Plays, or taking that kind of aspect of the discussion out of it. I'm of the opinion that these things kind of get decided by the market. You know, we're in a lovely capitalist state. If one channel charges and produces a substantially higher quality of Let's Play footage than the guy who's doing it for free, then people will pay for that. And if people see that somebody's making money from that, then somebody will come in and the market will sort itself out. I don't have any problem at all with people. I don't have any kind of moral issue with people doing that at all, really. I mean, I guess what I would say is somebody who just sat and Let's Played a video game from start to finish and didn't offer some kind of feedback. It doesn't even need to be criticism as such, but some kind of running commentary or assessment of the quality of the game, or gave some kind of input into that playing the game process. That I'm a little bit more uncomfortable with, to be perfectly honest. But if somebody's bringing something to the table, if they're adding a new layer to that experience from start to finish, they're bringing something to the table, I don't really have a problem with them trying to monetize that to some level or degree. And then the quality versus what that person earns will just get sorted out by people paying for quality. Simple as that.
yeah,
Or it should work out that way, certainly.
I agree with that whole line of thinking. People who do quality Let's Plays, I will watch more of. So people like Chip Cheesem and Ironicus, I actually watch a lot of their Let's Plays, as opposed to say PewDiePie or Darkside Phil, because I don't like the quality that they present. Unfortunately, the market has shown that PewDiePie is a lot more desirable, because more or less he's catering to the common denominator, and that there's a lot of 12-year-olds on the internet who like really dumb humor or something like that. I don't know how he has $4 million allegedly in revenue from his channel, but apparently he does. But I like watching, the quality Let's Plays, and that's really where it ends up. It's like you said, the market decides what happens, and I kind of find it hilarious that we try to lend our our analysis of this whole situation, or people in general, people's analysis of the whole situation. They try to say stuff like what Scott Manley does, where he does a semi let's play of say Kerbal Space Program, but he's explaining all the math and science behind it of like what he is doing in that game to say something that what PewDiePie does when he's playing Amnesia, Like they're not the same. They're two different forms and two different tiers of quality and information being given. But according to people like YouTube and Phil Fish and other people, it's a let's play, and therefore it's he owes Squad money.
I mean, if anybody thinks that Scott Manley hasn't sold outrageous quantities of Kerbal Space Program because of the videos that he's done on that game, then they're insane. You know what I mean? He has shifted untold quantities of that title because of the fabulous videos he's done. So I see it. I mean, I see it as a little bit of a win-win personally. I don't really see the moral complication personally.
Yeah, there are a lot of studios who agree with that, and a lot of them tend to be indie because hey, they need more money than they have right now because they're indie. It's just kind of how it goes for them. But there are also even larger studios like Ubisoft are totally fine with you monetizing an Assassin's Creed Let's Play, or Blizzard are totally fine if you want to do it for I don't know like World of Warcraft's questing, which I don't know why you would watch anyway, but you could do that. And then there are other developers like Nintendo. Nintendo are notorious for saying,
Yeah, they've been cracking down on it, haven't they?
yeah,
They cracked. There was that thing where the Evo tournament guys they managed to have a they managed to raise. They got
they had
the
like
people who follow that tournament
$75,000 or something like
they
that.
had a massive fundraiser to get Super Smash Bros. Brought into the tournament, and they got it in. And Nintendo said that's all well and good, but you won't be streaming footage of that tournament to the people who watch
Because
it because
yeah,
we're not going to let you. Simple as that. And that's just that's crazy to me. Absolutely crazy that so many people would push to make that game part of that amazing fighting game tournament, and Nintendo would just say no, we don't want people seeing that.
ultimately Nintendo did go back on saying you can't stream it. They said fine, you can stream it, totally fine. And they made like a deal with the guys who organize Evo. And Evo, for those who don't know, is a huge international fighting game tournament that takes place every year in Las Vegas. Um, and yeah, Nintendo would do that on YouTube as well. And there are also people like because I use the Something Awful Let's Play subforum. There are people who on there who do a lot of like Nintendo games because they just love Nintendo games, and they're like, we used to monetize this stuff, and now that Nintendo say, listen, please don't monetize this, it's not for you to monetize. They're fine. Like, hey, we'll not monetize the video. We're still gonna do it. And there are people who obviously are in Let's Plays for the money, and they'll move on to other game studios who let them monetize their games. And like you said, Xander, that's kind of the market adjusting itself.
I mean, I think we're using Nintendo as an example here. Nintendo's probably just about the worst example you can use because Nintendo are so backward in their online policies. I mean, they are literally 5 years behind everybody else. So,
well, there are other studios. Trying to think the big ones off the top of my head. I can't recall any off the top of my head right now, but Nintendo is probably one of the bigger ones that are like really anti YouTube monetization. Uh,
They actually, their big thing was they went around doing content ID claims, but apparently, whether or not this is a backtrack or not is up for debate. But apparently, they weren't trying to get all of the monetization revenue. They were just trying to get a portion of the monetization revenue, which is, I think, entirely reasonable if it's. If you're playing somebody's game, they put a lot of work into it. So I don't think it's that big of a deal to give them a small cut of what you make off of ads.
it's not that big of a deal, but it's interesting that why would I, the content creator who's adding content to existing content, so I'm building off a base, why do I need to pay someone else when I have created a work of my own? Why can't that come from the provider like YouTube?
I think you have to be very, very careful with that argument because while fundamentally I agree with you, you're not paying somebody else. You're giving them a cut of your income, which is a different thing. It's a subtle but very, very important distinction. These people aren't paying for the privilege of creating these let's plays. They are, the counter argument is that they're giving up a percentage of their revenue, which is an important distinction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree. I misspoke in saying why am I paying someone else? Why am I giving them a cut of something that I am making off work I did using their product as a base product? It's basically like if I like it's kind of a weird straw man argument, but if I took the Mona Lisa and I did my own variation off the base design of what the Mona Lisa looks like, and I sold that, do I have to pay the owner of the Mona Lisa's copyright because that's a well-known image, or like that sort of thing is that's where I'm seeing it as.
I don't know. I don't actually know what the legalities of that situation are. I would imagine you probably would, though. I would imagine you would probably have to give up a percentage of. I mean, certainly if the other great example is if you use samples in music. Yeah, I'm really into music. If you use a sample in a piece of music, you have to at the very least seek the original songwriter's permission to do so. And sometimes they might give that permission for free. Sometimes they might give that permission for a percentage of the cut. But ultimately, it's up to the original songwriter. And if you can't come to an agreement, you can't use that sample. And lots of very famous songs over the years have been rap music, particularly, is very big on this because they often use samples. Songs are delayed because they can't get permissions from the various copyright holders to use that particular sample, and it causes all sorts of problems. So in music, certainly there's a precedent there where if you want to use it, and it doesn't even, I mean, we're talking about putting a commentary over the top of an entire video game Let's Play video. We're talking about 3-4 second pieces of perhaps a little loop or a little sample from another song. You've got to. There's been previous presidents. A really famous example here in the UK is a song called "Bittersweet Symphony" by the Verve, which uses a short string sample from a Rolling Stones song. They didn't get permission or didn't get the proper permissions before that song went huge in the UK, and they had to give up the entire profits of that song. There was no arguments, there was no ifs nor buts. I know that the copyright's different over here, but the entire profits of that song were given to the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting thing because you don't really hear about or know much about how video games would handle something like that, because it's kind of getting into a similar territory with YouTube videos, especially in Let's Play. Like you said, I mean, they're fairly similar enough that we could actually compare them.
Yeah, they're well, kind of. So like, if you take a song and you just take the entirety of the song and then you replace the vocals with your own vocals, um, that very clearly requires permission from the artist, at least in the U.S. That's why Weird Al Yankovic gets permission on all of his music for the artists. That it is. I will say that while that is how it's done, there is a fair use argument there that people have made and successfully done, but there are people who have made that argument and have lost. So it's kind of up for debate, and that's more like what an LP is like. Whereas sampling songs, like let's say you're listening to "Power" by Kanye West, just as an example of a song, like a modern popular song that has a ton of just samples, right? That song samples a bunch of old music, including one of my favorite bands, when he samples 21st Century Schizoid Man. And that is a little more different because you're taking individual elements, like individual stings or individual bits and pieces of noise and music, and rearranging it into a new thing. So that's a little more transformative than what an LP is. To use it in an LP sense, that is more like a review or a one shot like try it thing, where it's just kind of like bouncing between a bunch of little things and putting it together into one cohesive whole, instead of just displaying the whole in its entirety, but with a new sort of commentary, I guess.
So let's twist this around a little bit then, guys. We're all Eve players, and I should know the answer to this, and it's terrible that I don't. But like I say, Let's Play has been kind of outside my sphere a little bit. But what's CCP's current policy on this?
CCP currently have a policy in which you can actually monetize YouTube videos with Eve content.
So there's no issues there at all. There's no problems. There's no
there was problems
placed in that.
And this kind of ties into how YouTube deals with it. So for a long time, for about I want to say about a year, Guard had posted on the forums at Evo that CCP are totally fine with you monetizing. So it had a dev tag post next to the post and all that fun stuff, right? So anyone who took 2 seconds to understand what was going on in that forum, realized a developer said that they can monetize, or we can monetize as players. If you had done a video and you uploaded it to YouTube, YouTube would say, well, it doesn't qualify as an official statement. So it actually took CCP a good while, as with all things CCP related, to put up on their policies page permission for the monetization to be granted. And that's something that YouTube would recognize. A forums post or a tweet, they don't recognize, even though it's coming from the official owner. Like if it's like a verified Twitter account from EA and EA says you can totally monetize our game, and that's all they had provided, YouTube will still say, that's not legitimate.
Because do you guys remember a couple of years ago there was a big hoo-ha about a website that Garmin set up, evaseasy.com. He was going to sell subscriptions to that particular website with PvP instructional videos on it. And there was a whole big heap of drama between Garmin and the guys making the videos and the guy that owned the site, who owned the URL, and there was a lot of hoo-ha, and there was money being held, and I think the project got binned in the end. But I believe that the reason the money was held in the first place was because they weren't sure if that project was actually, they worked out all the project, they started creating the videos, they created the site, and then somebody went, actually, are we allowed to do this from CCP's perspective? Are we actually allowed to create this website and profiteer and have subscriptions based on this model? And the whole kind of project collapsed in its arse based on that.
At the time, because I'm trying to remember like what specific year it was, but I'm pretty certain at the time that probably wasn't within CCP's official policy. Like it didn't follow CCP policy. As it stands now, they probably could do that, but that's, again, it's an iffy situation where we can put up a fight video on TMC, right? Like we do our Deep Space Newbies, our EVE Landmarks Unknown, and my nullsec recap. We monetize those because CCP gave us permission to monetize those. Do we also have permission to create a subscription system, like you said, where you can only get those videos through, say, a $5 a month subscription, which would give us more money per video than we're getting right now? That is a big question mark. I do not know the answer to that, and I'm pretty certain CCP doesn't know the answer to that.
It seems to me if you can either monetize or you can't. How you go about obtaining that money's is.
I would say it's the method in the
differentiation?
monetization. It's the process, right? Like they'll approve process A versus process B.
Okay.
That's how I would assume they would look at it. How they actually do it, because it's CCP for all we know, they could be like, oh, we don't know, and they'll pray to elvish gods about it because it's Iceland.
For a game that's so EVE is inherently an incredibly complex and difficult game, and you only have to start googling EVE guide out there for the number of EVE guides on everything. Making ESC, PvP and PvE and industry, whatever takes your fancy. It seems shocking to me that somebody hasn't yet decided to go down either monetizing a podcast or monetizing a video series, taking somebody through that,
So Scott Manley actually did some videos on like the EVE tutorial. It was like he does like 5 or 6 videos, right? And each one's about an hour long. That's a lot of content to put into an hour. In its own right, and it's also a lot of content to process after an hour, because that's a lot of information you have to process. EVE is not an easy game to get into. We all know this. But at the time when he was doing that, CCP's policy wasn't officially recognized by YouTube, so he couldn't monetize it. So he had no real incentive to make a lot of effort and time to create those videos, which is a side hobby for him. Like he's not living off YouTube. He has a real job. And him not to get any kickback for it, right? It's kind of the same deal with a lot of stuff people do. You don't do crossing zebras because I'm speaking in general. I don't know like what your official policy is, but let's say you don't do crossing zebras because you like doing videos and podcasts and articles for free. You get some sort of monetization out of it, and you're like, this is perfectly fine, even if it's just to cover your URL ownership for a year. That's perfectly fine for you. Scott Manley's doing a lot of time and effort. He's going through a lot of the process. He's playing EVE, taking his time away from doing, say, Kerbal Space Program videos, and he's not getting any of that kickback. He's not going to want to do that. And again, I'm not speaking on behalf of Scott Manley or you. I'm just saying like that's the general mindset. Now that people can actually monetize EVE videos, I don't see why anyone's not doing that, unless, save for the fact that it actually takes a lot of time to put together.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting in and of itself.
Yeah.
I'm surprised nobody's actually taken the plunge, but...
Well, CCP are pretty progressive in that regard. And a lot of video game companies are starting to realize YouTube, like you said earlier, like YouTube is an easy way to get monetization. If there's more videos about Eve out there with giant fights, like the Rooks and Kings battle videos, those are great marketing pieces. Those are perfect ways to sell the game to someone. Uh, Tutorial videos are also a good way to sell the game to someone because someone's like, I've tried Eve, I don't understand it. I send them this tutorial video that someone made. That person gets money. The person who was interested in the game possibly and hopefully most likely ends up playing the game and buying a subscription. Everyone wins in the end. That's not always going to how that's not always how it's going to end up, but I mean, it's good for everyone.
So let's take this conversation one step further. Obviously, Eve has now moved into this 6-week development cycle. We've moved away from the kind of 2 tentpole releases in the year. I personally think that's a good thing. Other people might disagree, but I personally think that the 6-weekly release cycle is going to lead to a better Eve Online, the video game. I'm also well aware of the fact that it's probably going to make Eve much more difficult to market. It becomes much more difficult to sell a game which doesn't have 2 big, massive, flashy releases in a year, but actually sort of 8, 9, 10 much smaller, kind of less flashy releases over the course of a year. And it's interesting to me, CCP are obviously going to have to try and find ways to market Eve differently. And it seems like an obvious avenue would be to try and get into the, start pushing the video side more and supporting the community, TMC, even Use 24, Crossing Zebras, the blogs as well, supporting all these different sites and pulling them together. It seems to me like they need to work hard on that, I would suggest, to kind of compensate for the fact that they don't have these 2 massive tentpoles in the year.
Yeah. So with CCP Loxy and CCP Bro no longer at CCP, I don't know how they would do it themselves because they were part of the video team.
Yeah.
I can't remember the British chick's name, but she used to do like the interviews at FanFest and stuff.
CCP Mimic?
No, it wasn't Mimic. She was a blonde chick. She doesn't work there. It's like Stevie something.
Oh, Stevie G.
Yeah,
Stevie G. Yeah.
She doesn't work for CCP or something. I don't know if she ever actually really worked for CCP, but she doesn't do that anymore as often as she used to. But so they're not probably going to be doing those crazy ads like we saw, like the Prophecy ad and the Rubicon ad. I don't think they're going to do those as often or anymore because that requires people to do them. I don't think they have people to do them anymore. But I would imagine that in terms of updating players on what's going on, yeah, us as TMC doing a video on, hey, this is all the content that's coming in Koreas, which we're most likely going to end up doing because it's content for us to do and also promotes the game. And also it's informative, so that's, again, content for us. It's likely to happen, and it should be happening. CCP themselves doing it would require them to have people who actually do it, and I don't know who is left that actually does that sort of work. Because a lot of the on-camera or people with video savvy skills don't really work there anymore.
Well, a lot of people don't work there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, when you fire 200 people in a year, you lose a fair amount of staff that know what they're doing.
When you fire most of your competent staff, you tend to have issues.
But yeah, I mean, it would make sense for those sort of videos to be more regular. In terms of player-made videos. Now, what's kind of interesting is now that CCP allows that sort of stuff, are we going to see what was the Gary's Mod Eve crossover series that one guy did? Clear Skies?
I'm not sure.
Clear Skies is Clear Skies is the kind of
the machinima.
He used Gary. Yeah, he used Gary's, but I think he also used CCP's kind of they have an in-game engine which they use to make trailers and stuff like that. I think for the first 2 he made them using Gary's mod and then kind of filmed bits on CC and in-game and stuff like that. But for the 3rd one, I think CCP gave him access to their own in-game engines.
To Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica, that's correct. Yeah, I think he got access to Jessica for making the 3rd one. He didn't have that for the first 2, but he did for the 3rd one. Is my understanding.
Yeah, and so for them to. So for those YouTube monetizations to happen now, like because I can make Eve videos, I can use Eve assets, I can use Eve sound. I would love to see that because I was a big fan of Machinima when I was like in high school and stuff. I always thought that was cool.
Very, very funny you mentioned that. I just got off Google Hangout with Ali Arras from
Hmm.
TMC. She does her Google Hangouts every week, and this week she was talking about lore, and they had CCP Falcon on as well. And that question actually came up from somebody. Do you think CCP would give more access to players to facilities like Jessica to make in-game videos? To help. Just because people are interested, there's a lot of artistic people out there that play the game, but also to help market the game as well. You know what I mean?
What they should do, and this is how I think they should really do it, is they should take the guy who's doing the Eve like history book. I forget his actual name. I think it's Groen or something like that. Stephen Groen, the guy who's doing the Eve history book that raised like $90,000 in Kickstarter. I would know this if because I actually wrote the article on it, but that requires me to remember things. But if they work with that guy and a small video staff, not CCP related, give them access to Jessica, they can then turn that into a video series, much like how History Channel did the History of Us for America or the Story of Mankind. Like you turn the stories into actual video, uh, and you make that into a documentary where you can actually interview Matani on camera, and then you have it overlapped and with his voiceover on top of like describing the destruction of Bob and stuff like that. That would be cool. That would be a really good way for CCP to monetize and market their product. Question is, how much is it going to end up costing them in the end? And that's a big question when it comes to video production. Is the costs aren't always figured out ahead of time. They should be, but sometimes shit just costs more money than you expect.
Yeah, and we are making huge presumptions on just how easy it would be to make the likes of Jessica player friendly and usable. You know what I mean?
From
Like a
what I
Garry's mod.
understand, because I actually asked someone at CCP this when I was at FanFest last year, and I've asked several CCP staff. As it currently stands, the way they use Jessica, unless you have a really good understanding of the tools involved, you're not really going to understand how to use it at all. So they would need to make it like. It would be pretty cool if they made like a Final Cut Pro version of Jessica, or a Steam Films, I think is the program Steam released. Steam Movie Maker.
No, Source
Yeah,
Source
Source Filmmaker.
Filmmaker is what you're thinking
If
of.
they did something like that, that would be cool. But even then, Source Filmmaker is really tricky to understand.
That's a really cool. Source Filmmaker is actually really cool in a lot of ways, just because it opens up 3D movie creation to more than just people who can do like that have render farms and like really expensive software because it's free, right? But to sort of tie this back into LPs, because you're talking about machinima, right? Machinima to me is like sampling, because what you're doing is you're taking the assets of a game and then you're completely changing it, you're completely recontextualizing the assets into a new thing, right? Like, there's no way that you could say that an LP of Halo and Red versus Blue is anywhere close to the same level of. I'm not going to say work because, I mean, obviously lots of people put hard work into their Let's Play, but they're not the same level of, like, transformative changes to the media, right? Because, like, if you're just playing Halo, you're just playing Halo. That's not really. You're not really doing stuff outside of the. You're not really completely changing how the game and how people view the game. But with Red versus Blue, you are actually. They did very significant things with Red versus Blue. Probably like the most famous Machinima series of all time,
I
I'd
would
say.
say Red versus Blue
Right?
early on didn't do that much in terms of transformative work because it was just them playing the game, but in a slightly different fashion. Uh,
Okay, so it depends. You have to be very careful here because what are you considering transformative? I mean, I'm not sure exactly what the definition is here. I mean, they're literally they're not changing much of the actual in-game engine, but in terms of the tone of Halo and what Halo is, and how Halo had a very serious space marines killing aliens, saving the world tone, and what they did is they completely took the piss out of that entire kind of thought process and that entire setup. So whilst it might not have been transformative in a literal engine warping sense, it's still Space Marines running around for the most part. In terms of tone, it was completely different. I mean, it was arse over tit, completely the opposite end of the
yeah,
spectrum.
I'm not denying that they actually changed the tone of the Halo motif and background because they tied some stuff into Halo and marketing videos and stuff, and obviously that paid off really well for Bungie and Microsoft. But what I'm saying is, early on they were still using the base game, but when they moved on later and they actually had people who knew how to animate and knew how to do different things and cool stuff, They started to become its own. Like Red versus Blue basically outgrew the use of needing Halo. They could just animate their own videos and be done. I remember it was at PAX 2010, 2009, something like that. They actually released an animated like anime uh episode of Red vs. Blue that they really want to like get onto TV on with like Adult Swim, or I don't know what the equivalent is in the UK, but I would assume you have something like Adult Swim where it's adult cartoon programming. Unfortunately, that didn't ever materialize, but uh, it's it's basically saying we took the game, we used it as is up until a certain point, and then we stopped using it. That obviously goes from a non-transformative work in terms of literal sense to a transformative work in an actual sense, because they're taking all the art assets that they had in the Halo series and making it do different things than it was intended to. In terms of tone, it was always transformative. They always took the piss out of Halo, as you said.
Well, it was also transformative in a way that it used the game for something that was not really the game wasn't really specifically designed for. Like because the original Red versus Blue was just a bunch of like it's actually really interesting hearing them talk about all the stuff that they did to do Red versus Blue, like getting footage and stuff. It was just them in a multiplayer server standing around and then like wiggling up and down in order to make it look like they were talking, right? And it sort of takes what is a game about shooting enemies and fighting and so on and turns it into this like really goofy comedy drama, like just very stupid parody of the game that it's based on, right? But it fundamentally changed it from this is a game about shooting and fighting and stuff into basically like this is a movie, right? Like that is why I think that Machinima in general, this Red versus Blue is just a really good example. But Machinima in general, where you take a game engine and then you go and you take game engine and game assets and then make a movie or choose your own adventure or whatever and turn it into its own thing. That is far more transformative than doing an LP. So that is definitely covered under fair use. Just since we were talking about machinima stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we did go off
I
on
just
a
wanted to
bit of a
make that.
tangent there. So, like, to close this all up, it's a topic and a discussion that's a lot more difficult to summarize and sort out in the span of an hour. And it's also something that's going to cost and have to have legal battles and legal discussions on. Most famously, Viacom had to have a legal battle that ranged several years with YouTube to basically have YouTube finally crack down on illegal copies of TV shows and movies on their service. I'm pretty certain people like Nintendo who are very anti YouTube will need to have that sort of not that same scale, but there probably will be legal battles raged over Let's Plays in some capacity. Whether it's national news making like Viacom versus YouTube, who knows? But I highly doubt it. But it's going to happen. It's probably already happening right now that we just don't know much about it.
We haven't seen a significant legal challenge regarding Let's Plays yet, which is interesting because Let's Plays are, along with a few other pieces of media, like games and media, are like one of the fastest growing sectors of like gaming. So it's kind of interesting that we haven't seen a legal challenge like that yet. A significant legal challenge, mind. We've seen a lot of settlements. I don't know if we'll ever see like an outright legal challenge because I don't know if developers want to take just some like kid sitting in his basement that's making like $20 a day off of his Let's Plays to court, um, or if they'll just tell the kid like give us $2 out of that 20 and we'll be fine. Like I think that a lot of these, I don't know if it'll ever actually go to legality unless somebody goes after like PewDiePie.
Well, so as
Some
Darius said in a previous episode of our podcast, developers are actually starting to realize that a lot of people who do videos, especially like Let's Plays and stuff, are also big fans. So, there is a bit of that in the sense that developers don't want to piss off their fans that are diehard fans of them because that's who they cater to. and that's who they sell each of their games to. You know what I mean? But they also obviously want to hold on to their control of the intellectual property, which they have they perfectly have the right to do that. That, like, at least in the United States, they have ownership of that intellectual property. They can do whatever the fuck they want with it. I don't know how it works in the EU, but I would assume most of the EU uh, laws regarding copyright and IP protection pretty much reflect that you own the IP. You can do with it as you want. If you don't own the IP, you don't get to do anything you want with it. You need permission.
Yeah. So I think this conversation is really good, and I think we're starting to go in circles.
Yeah.
So
I think we've been going in circles
this is
since
as good
day
a
one,
point.
but
Well, yes, but so thank you for coming on to the show, Xander. We're gonna go ahead and call this a podcast. So, do you want to lead us out, Hendrik?
yeah, so for all EVE news, reviews, guides, and even more video game discussion, reviews, and guides, and videos, don't forget those nice videos, you can always visit thematani.com. You can also visit Xander and his crew over at crossingzebras.com. You can also keep an eye on CSM9, because Xander is apparently part of that for some fault of the EVE community. They voted him.
Actually, it was, you can blame Goons for that one. I mean, almost
Yeah, see?
entirely you can blame Goons
Goons
for.
just ruined everything, so... When are you going to fix slag? That's the question, Xander.
When I'm going to fix lag.
Yeah, when are you getting rid of tie-dye?
Right about. Yeah, tie-dye. We've got that scheduled for. What's the one after Cryas? I think it's coming in for that one that we're binning tie-dye altogether, and everything's going to work perfectly for 10,000 man battles.
Cool.
Is it Cryas or is it Crius?
I'm calling it Cryas. I'm pronouncing it Cryas, but I could be dead wrong.
I pronounce it Crius too, just because it fits with Kronos more to me.
I mean, you guys can't spell colour, so I'm not going to rely too much on what you guys have to say on the matter, to be honest.
You guys can't wear underwear underneath your skirts, but I mean... Alright. So that's it, guys. Thanks for listening. See you next time.